American, Delta, United.
We're about to fly across the Atlantic 3 times to compare these top US airlines head-to-head in the ultimate business class battle. We'll test it all: the lounges, the food, the seats, and more. Spoiler alert, you may not believe the result.
Hello, jet setters. I'm Jeb Brooks from greenergrass.com. The transatlantic throwdown starts now, and you're coming along.
Here's the plan. First, we'll fly with American Airlines from JFK to London. Then, we'll fly back over to the US with United to Newark. And finally, we'll travel with Delta Airlines from Atlanta to Heathrow.
We're taking a data-driven approach so we keep our opinions out of it.
Suzanne is an engineer, so she's bringing the science to the table. We really like comparing American, Delta, and United because they are legacy carriers in the United States and are fierce rivals. So it's going to be a lot of fun to find out which of those three is the top airline and the one we most recommend to you with the Greener Grass seal of approval. Now be sure to watch all the way to the end so you can see the definitive rankings of these three airlines. Which should you take the next time you're looking to cross the Atlantic Ocean?
But first,
this is American Airlines Flagship Business. Passengers booked into Flagship Business coming out of here at JFK have access to the Greenwich Lounge, so let's check it out.
flying international business class on American Airlines will grant you access to their flagship business lounges, which you'll find at 5 of their 7 hubs with transatlantic service.
The lounge situation here at JFK is a little unique inside the American Airlines network. You see, they co-host these spaces with British Airways for their transatlantic business class flights. The space here is roughly equivalent to what you'll find in flagship business class lounges at airports like LA or Dallas, and certainly elevated above Admirals clubs like you'll have access to if you're flying international out of places like Charlotte or Philadelphia. All that's to say, the American Airlines approach to lounges can be a little confusing and varies depending on where you're leaving from.
But here in the Greenwich Lounge, you'll find a buffet as well as a menu with food made to order. There are also views for days to get you in the mood for your upcoming transatlantic adventure. Before we board, it's time for a quick public service announcement. Please don't mistake any criticism for a lack of gratitude on our part. We want this video to be a tool to help you decide which of these carriers is the right choice for you, and that means pointing out pluses and minuses along the way to help you do that.
American Airlines has announced a brand new flagship business class cabin that they'll be releasing sometime soon. I cannot wait to check that out. But for now, we're going to check out their existing product, which looks pretty comfortable too. Here it is, the 11.5-year-old Boeing 777-300 that's going to take us over to London. Next stop, London.
On board, you'll find seats arranged in a 1-2-1 configuration. Suzanne is booked into seat 7J, and I'm in 8J for this flight. We tried to pick seats in about the same place on each leg of this comparison.
Here in flagship business, you'll find a pillow, blanket, slippers, an amenity kit, and headphones.
There's also a bottle of water, but as always, bring an extra.
American Airlines bedding is by Casper, which is a great brand, really comfortable. Looking forward to putting it to the test, though.
The tray table is large and sturdy, and although mine was dirty, a quick brush made it clean again. The amenity kit included all the basics you'd come to expect, with Suzanne's favorite being the eye shade.
I think I'm actually like this. I don't like a lot of them, but this one's pretty good. Usually they're like pretty tight or they have Velcro in back, and I don't like that.
Menus are available at each seat, outlining the meal options on board, including for breakfast, which would be available about 90 minutes before landing. There was even a wine list. However, we'd taken advantage of American's pre-ordering capability for our main course. A flight attendant confirmed our orders shortly after boarding. Flight attendants offered pre-departure beverages. We settle into our seats, and soon we're pushing back. And as we taxied across JFK, the first leg of this transatlantic throwdown had truly begun. The screen is, for want of a better term, tired. It's not very bright, and although it is a touch screen, it's difficult to interface with. I ended up needing to use the remote rather than the screen. Further, it seemed confused about where we were even heading. We could choose, however, from 381 movies, including 73 new releases. And for what it's worth, there was also this toggle if you wanted to plug something in here or even pull out your old iPod. In sum, the IFE on American Airlines is fairly old. However, the Bang & Olufsen headphones were quite good. Usually flight attendants collect them about 45 minutes or an hour before landing, but for some reason on this trip, we were able to use them all the way to the gate in London. Wi-Fi was also available for $35 for the entire flight. I took off my shoes and stored them in this well-designed cubby designed for the purpose, adjusted the seat, and got comfortable. Service began with a hot towel, and 32 minutes after takeoff, drinks and warm nuts were served. While I could have had a glass of $45 a bottle champagne, I went instead with a gin and tonic. Again, we'd pre-ordered, but for passengers who didn't, the menu was available with 4 options on board. For dinner, I chose the macadamia-crusted sea bass with citrus cream sauce, quinoa, toasted orzo, and green beans. There was also eggplant caponata with grilled artichokes and feta cheese, and a romaine salad on the tray. Suzanne had the pan-roasted chicken with chives, garlic mashed potatoes, roasted broccolini, and pepperonata sauce.
American Airlines nailed it. I mean, this sea bass crusted with macadamia nuts, it's so good. It's light and refreshing. Oftentimes, meals on flights are heavy and kind of too much. That's not the case here. This is on point. They have nailed this meal.
For dessert, Suzanne had the traditional ice cream sundae with hot fudge and whipped cream. Now, I went for the raspberry swirl cheesecake. After dessert, we set up our beds and got ready for sleep.
This is a pretty comfortable bed, really, all things considered. There's room at the shoulders, and the footwell is perfectly acceptable. I would consider this a pretty typical business class seat, I guess. I hope I'm going to sleep well tonight, but time will tell.
Suzanne wasn't too far behind me, but about 4.5 hours later,
I slept really well for a transatlantic flight, and I just woke up. They've already done breakfast service. I asked to be woken up, but they didn't wake me up, which on the one hand, I'm sorry about. I wanted to have breakfast, but on the other hand, I'm glad I got more sleep. On the other hand, they were very quiet for that service.
Thankfully, at least for the sake of this video, Suzanne did wake up and had the fresh fruit bowl with Greek yogurt and salted caramel granola. She said the absolute highlight was the biscuit. Just before we began our descent, I took advantage of the toothbrush from the amenity kit. We enjoyed some stunning views of London. Before long, we were wheels down at Heathrow, and now it's time to switch gears.
This is United Polaris. Love seeing all those United tails here at Heathrow. Too bad the windows need a little cleaning, but still nice to see. They've run an amazing operation here at Heathrow, actually. There just is so much United service, it almost feels like this is another hub. We're gonna head downstairs and check out the United Club here in London. Now, of course, if you're departing with Polaris from the United States, you'll have access to their incredible Polaris lounges, which we'll tell you more about in just a minute. Here it is, the 22-year-old 767-300 that'll take us over to Newark today. The United Club here in London has to be one of the nicest in the entire system. In fact, that's the longest bar in the entire airport here in London. There's a lot going for it, but it's still not quite the same as departing from the US, where you'll have access to Polaris lounges. Those are some of the best in the United States, and in order to be fair in this comparison, we're going to show you what it's like right now if you're leaving the US.
Polaris lounges exist at 6 of United's 7 hubs with transatlantic flights. Only Denver is lacking one. They're truly beautiful spaces with plenty of seating, large buffets, and even a la carte restaurants. Like American's flagship lounges, these are reserved for passengers traveling in international business class cabins, making them much more exclusive than a typical United Club. Meanwhile, back in London at the United Club, it's not like you'll be hurting if you have access. There's a buffet, sufficient seating, and of course, great views of the action below. While we wait to board, here's a quick invitation to click that subscribe button if you haven't already. You see, we spent some time in Europe before taking this flight, and there's more to come from that trip you may not want to miss. But as time marched on, it was nearly time for us to board.
Of these 3 airlines, I've got to say United is the most consistent in terms of the seats. The Polaris product you'll experience on the wide-bodied airplanes on these international flights is pretty consistent across the airline, unlike the other 2 airlines where there's a little bit of a question about what kind of seat you're going to see. Next stop, Newark.
On board the 767, you'll find a 111 configured cabin.
I'm booked into seat 5L, and Suzanne is in 6L. Hey, Suzanne. The odd-numbered seats are closer to the window, and the even-numbered seats are closer to the aisle, which gives you a little bit less privacy, I guess you could say. So if you want privacy, really your best bet is a window seat that is an odd-numbered window seat.
At each seat, you'll find 2 blankets, 2 pillows, an amenity kit, headphones, and a bottle of water. Slippers are available on request. There's also a menu outlining everything available on board, as well as a wine list.
We had a little bit of a delay here on the ground because of catering and cleaning the plane, but we're going to have an on-time arrival. That said, no pre-departure beverages on offer on this flight, so that's not a good thing for our data-driven approach to this experience.
On a day like this at Heathrow, the views on the taxi out to the runway are truly magical. Now, it's not often this sunny, but we sure did luck out today. On board, the IFE provides the order of operations for the service, a really nice touch if you ask me. In addition to the standard moving map, it also offers 343 movies, including 37 new releases. It can also be controlled by remote control. Wi-Fi was available for $37 for the entire flight. I settled in, adjusting the seat exactly where I wanted, and plugged in the headphones.
These are okay. They're not tremendously noise canceling. What frequently asked question is, do you get to keep the headphones that you use in business class? And the answer is no. You have to leave these behind.
The tray table takes up space in the seat by its very design, but it is sturdy.
Now, that was a first. I've never heard this announcement. The purser just came over the PA and announced that they're understaffed for this flight, particularly in the Polaris cabin. So they're hopeful that we'll be supportive and understanding, which of course we would be. I think the term understaffed is a little concerning because flight attendants are here for our safety. There are certainly enough flight attendants per FAA regulations, but the service might be a little slow. We'll give them the benefit of the doubt there.
Service began with a hot towel. And the amenity kit, by the way, includes pretty much everything you'd expect, including a lot of, as Dennis Bunnick would say, lotions and potions. Drinks came 41 minutes after departure. I chose the Gary Farrell Russian River Pinot Noir. Suzanne had a glass of the $50 a bottle champagne, which our flight attendant helpfully presented in an incredibly creative and practical ice bucket. Shortly after we'd boarded, our flight attendant confirmed our pre-orders, addressing me as Mr. Brooks. I picked the beef tenderloin, and Suzanne went with the roast chicken.
So just prior to delivering this tray of food, I was asked about a choice of appetizers. Did I want the prawns or the goat's cheese? I chose the goat's cheese, and it is absolutely perfection. United International Catering is getting better, it really is.
The fresh salad was a welcome addition, but United International Catering isn't quite there yet. As nice as the beef looked, it was overcooked and dry. Suzanne was happy with the prawns she chose as her appetizer, and the chicken was nice too, but the corn was over-seasoned. I love the little detail of United incorporating its logo into the salt and pepper shakers. I skipped dessert, but Suzanne could not say no to an ice cream sundae.
As a side sleeper, this is super comfortable. It really is. I feel like I've got plenty of space. The footwell, as is the case, as I've said, in all of these business class seats, is tight. Just the nature of the way that the layout works, there's not a lot you can do about it. But this is a really comfortable seat. Suzanne has pointed out that the cushion of it is really nice. It's got some good padding to it. So let's catch a few Z's and make our way over to Newark.
It's worth noting that despite being in a slightly more exposed seat than I was, Suzanne had no trouble sleeping at all. About 90 minutes before landing, the pre-arrival meal service began with another hot towel. I chose the Wellington burger, which may not be the healthiest thing from United's catering, but I sure do love it due to its sheer indulgence. The French fries, though, were a real disappointment and probably should not be included in the future. They're just too soggy. It's no surprise on an airplane. Suzanne's veggie chili tasted fine, but the presentation could have really used some work. We crossed over Massachusetts and Connecticut before making our way over the Catskill Mountains, passing the Goodyear blimp at one point for an on-time arrival into Newark. But we're not done yet.
This is Delta One. Today, we're flying a 23-year-old Delta 767-400. Now, the seats vary widely across the Delta fleet, and for the definitive ranking of each aircraft type, be sure to check out the video I'll link in the description below. There's no way to sugarcoat it. Delta have been lagging behind the other airlines in terms of lounges, but that changes with the introduction of the Delta One lounge up at JFK, with more to come. But all we have here in Atlanta is the Sky Club, so let's head inside and check it out.
Currently, only one of Delta's 8 hubs with transatlantic flights has a premium lounge. As I mentioned, that's JFK. Delta's Sky Clubs have been frequently criticized for being overcrowded. Food is available on a buffet, and most of the clubs in the Delta network do a nice job of featuring food from the cities they're in. Now, if you do look hard enough, you will find seats. There are also views of the action out on the ramp, too. Best of all, this club on the F concourse has an outdoor space.
It's a nice space, but a little too hot for me right now.
We're in the wrong concourse. My fault.
So we decided to make our way over to the E concourse, where we settled into that Sky Club.
Is eating ribs one-handed weird?
No, but me making a video of you eating ribs one-handed is weird.
We were back at the gate, and before we knew it, it was time to board.
Next stop, London.
On board this 767, you'll find a 121 configured cabin. On this leg, I'm booked into seat 2D, and Suzanne is in 3D. As I mentioned, Delta's wide-body fleet has a variety of seat types, but on this airplane, even-numbered ones are closer to the window and offer a bit more privacy. Passengers in Delta One will find at their seat one blanket, one pillow, slippers, headphones, a bottle of water, and an amenity kit. More about that amenity kit once we get in the air.
And we are on board. A couple things real quick. So first of all, there's really no space in the overhead bin above me, unfortunately. It's filled with the headphones. And Suzanne didn't have an amenity kit, but we'll request one and I'm sure they'll bring it. But anyway, kind of not perfect arrival on board, but we'll take it.
A friendly flight attendant appeared with a pre-departure beverage, a glass of Prosecco. Now here's your friendly reminder that as nice as this welcome on board is, they don't open up the good stuff until after takeoff. Of course, menus were found at each seat that outlined everything available on the flight today. The in-flight entertainment system has a moving map feature and offers 504 movies, but only 19 new releases. It can also be controlled by the remote control in here. The headphones were really quite good. Wi-Fi was available for purchase for $5, and not to get ahead of ourselves in terms of comparisons, but that's significantly cheaper and ended up being much, much faster than the other two airlines. The amenity kit included the basics. However, Delta is now in the process of rolling out new ones, and they look a lot more impressive. We both settled in for another crossing of the Atlantic Ocean. Service began with drinks 23 minutes after departure. Suzanne went with a glass of the $54 a bottle champagne, and I chose to start with a glass of the Rioja. We flew right over our home airport, Piedmont Triad International, and could even spot our house in Greensboro. I started with tomato bisque, which shared the tray with the burrata and a mixed green salad. When it comes to the main course, there are only 3 options on the in-flight menu, but pre-ordering meant more to choose from. I'd selected the lamb meatballs, and Suzanne went with the simply prepared roasted chicken.
There's no way I pass up meatballs anytime, and these are gonna be good. These are great.
For dessert, Suzanne had the ice cream sundae, and I couldn't pass up the banana pudding cheesecake with caramel, cinnamon, and whipped cream. As we continued north along the east coast of the United States, we knew it was time to try out the bed.
Getting settled in here for a short night of sleep. The problem with these East Coast flights is they're just not long enough to really get a good night of rest, but the good news is this bed is pretty comfortable. The footwell in most of these business class seats is tight, and that's the case with this one, of course. And the shoulders are also a little tight. I'm lucky I'm a side sleeper, so it's a little easier for me, but regardless, it's impossible to complain about a lie flat seat in the sky. Like, that's ridiculous. So we're super fortunate to get to do this and, of course, to share it with you. But for now, it's time for me to go to sleep. See you tomorrow.
About 4.5 hours later, I was awake again. I'm always grateful to see a toothbrush in the amenity kit on overnight flights. With just under 90 minutes to landing, service began again with a pre-landing snack. I chose the red pepper frittata with chicken sausage, marbled potatoes, and wilted spinach. Suzanne had the Greek yogurt parfait with homemade granola and mango pineapple compote. We enjoyed another picture-perfect approach into Heathrow that included stunning views of central London before yet another on-time arrival into one of Europe's busiest airports. But now it's time to turn our attention to that data-driven approach Suzanne promised. First, the lounges. United gets the win with their Polaris lounges, which are available at 6 of their 7 transatlantic hub airports. The option for restaurant-style dining puts them over the top. Delta is in last place, since, at least for now, at 7 of their 8 transatlantic hubs, you'll be stuck in a Sky Club instead of having an elevated lounge experience on your transatlantic flight. Next, let's compare seats. We give United the win for their Polaris seat since it was the most roomy by the numbers, and this seat is offered consistently across the majority of their international fleet. Delta's in last place, though, because at least on the 767-400, it's tight in the feet and at the shoulders. Now, it's time to talk food. American comes in first place. That fish was by far the most delicious thing I ate on any of these flights, and United comes in last for their less than tasty offerings. Let's look at IFE. Delta wins for their well-priced and fast Wi-Fi and top movie selections, and American finds itself in last place due to its antiquated and hard-to-use screen. On to service. Onboard service is always hard to rate, but United comes in third place with their significantly slower meal service. Now, that's not a reflection of the crew we had necessarily, but rather the fact that they had fewer flight attendants than they'd normally have for service on this airplane with so many Polaris seats. The win, though, goes to Delta, thanks to their speed, although it is worth noting, we normally try to sit farther back away from the galley than we did on this flight. We could hear the crew chatting all night long. But there you have it. And tallying it all up, the winner is, it's a 3-way tie. It turns out they all provide just about the same thing. In general, they're relatively consistent, and if you're struggling with the decision, you should probably just turn to the schedule or price that works best for you. And speaking of price, let's try using the price as a tiebreaker. We looked at a round-trip business class ticket from New York to London with 2 months advance purchase. But even those prices are nearly identical. So what should you look for before you book? All things being even, you're most likely to encounter an elevated lounge experience and consistent seat on United. If you fly American or Delta, the seats may not look like the ones we experienced, but buyer beware. Also, make sure you research the lounge situation at the airport your transatlantic flight departs from if you plan to spend some time relaxing before you leave. In the end, though, it's up to you whether the price premium is worth it on these relatively short transatlantic hops. Maybe sometime we should check out premium economy. Compare those. Between now and the next time, see you in the sky.
I think we're going to find out they're all the same.
Probably. The transatlantic. God, you guys have no idea how this is so awkward. Now be sure to watch all the way to the end so you can across all of them. And I'm going to have to do that again. But they're changing that with the introduction of a new. I'm going to start over again. What? Something funny out there?
It's funny.
I'm working here. Today we're flying a 23-year-old. You think we're good?
This is enough riffing.
We're riffed out.
Yeah.